Hi, it's Mark from Top Local Lead Generation. We're here with Mr. Bernie Pawlik of Pawlik Automotive. They're an award-winning shop in Vancouver, BC. 14 times so far, voted best in Vancouver. How are you doing today, Bernie?
Really well.
I guess we're talking about pumping of fuel in a Range Rover. So what happened with this vehicle?
Yeah, well, we did a service recently on a 2006 Range Rover. The customer called us up, regular customer of ours called us up, said, hey, I just went into the store to get something, came out, my vehicle won't start. Engine cranks over fine, but it just wouldn't start. So there's honestly not much we can do. Roadside, unfortunately, with modern vehicles, they're just so complicated. There's not much you can do to fix them on the roadside. I asked him a couple of questions, and we kind of came to the conclusion there was nothing we could do. So he towed the vehicle in. So towed the vehicle in. Our next step was to do some diagnostic work on the vehicle, and so essentially just a little bit of an educational piece. I mean, on an internal combustion gasoline engine, there's really three things required for the engine to run, assuming the starter cranks the engine over. One is compression, engine compression. Second is presence of fuel, and the third is a spark to ignite the fuel. So these are the tests that we do. Now, compression is generally pretty, like for an experienced mechanic like ourselves, we can hear if an engine compression is good just by the way the engine cranks over. So we ruled that one out very quickly. Next test was to see if there's spark present and make sure the fuel injectors are getting pulsed by the computer. They actually receive little electrical signals, and these are not too difficult to test. So we tested that. Good injector pulse, good spark. So the last thing is, okay, is there any fuel there? We connected a fuel pressure gauge up to the vehicle and found that there was no fuel pressure. So we concluded basically the fuel pump is obviously not running. So there's a couple more tests to run just to verify that it's not a wiring or electrical issue or the computer's not turning the fuel pump on. We did those tests and found the fuel pump, in fact, was dead.
So I've heard that fuel pumps and experienced that fuel pumps are an expensive and labor-intensive job. So how was this one?
Fairly labor intensive. The good thing with Range Rover, and I'm going to show you a couple of pictures here. The fuel pump is fortunately located is accessible inside the vehicle. If you can see this picture here, there's you can see a couple of covers opened up. This is with the back seat of the vehicle removed, and on the top, under the top cover, that's where the actual main fuel pump sits. You can also see a bottom cover a little lower down, and under that cover, that's where there's an extra pickup tube. This vehicle uses what's called a saddle tank. It's pretty popular on a lot of vehicles that have rear-wheel drive. This is a four-wheel drive vehicle, so there's a drive shaft running down the vehicle, and they actually put the gas tank over top of the drive shaft. So to remove the fuel tank is a horrendous job, but to get but in order to suck the fuel, they have to pick it up from two different spots. So this has a rather complex fuel pump system. Here's another picture. This is an access, if you can see that. This is the actual access to the fuel pump. There's a lot of dust and dirt there because it's been sitting there for 10 years. And then here's a view of the actual fuel pump itself. This is the new pump assembly that's going into the vehicle. There's a few interesting things to note. So on the right-hand side, that big, huge black piece, that's the actual fuel pump itself. And you can see a couple of little brownish colored pieces with sort of a bent wire attached to them. Those are the fuel tank sending units. There's two of them, and they basically float in the gas and they send an electrical signal to the fuel gauge, and that's how you know how much fuel you have. Now on the left side of the photo, you can see sort of a small black piece. You can see the sending unit and a couple of other bits and pieces. That's basically a pickup for the fuel pump. And on the Range Rover, it's a bit complicated because you have to actually get into the tank and stick your arm in and pull these different pieces out, use the two access holes. It's a much nicer job for the technician if the vehicle's low on fuel. Unfortunately, this one actually came in pretty low on fuel. We do get some where the gas tank's absolutely full, and that's not so much fun to do. So that's the fuel pump pictures.
So why would the fuel pump be put inside the gas tank like this?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. From a manufacturing perspective, it's easier to put everything in as an assembly. So they can put the fuel pumps, the tank, and everything in, and then when they build the vehicle, they can just bolt it right up and stick it right in the vehicle. That's one reason. The other reason is that it's actually better to pump the fuel right at the source instead of sucking it, you say 10, because you can put the fuel pump under the vehicle, and that's what older fuel injected vehicles used to have. But it's better to suck it right at the source. It uses less energy to do that, so it's actually more efficient.
So if my car doesn't start, like this Range Rover, is there any way of knowing what's causing it that would be obvious? And is there some way I could get it to start maybe and get it to a garage?
Well, a couple of things. One thing about fuel pumps is they always make a humming noise when they run. It's kind of subtle, but if you actually get out of your vehicle and you kind of stick your ear under the car near the gas tank, you can usually hear a faint humming sound. That's always happening when the engine's running. When you turn a key on in the on position and you turn it to start, just before it starts, usually the fuel pump on most cars, it's not true on all cars, but most cars, it'll actually run for about 2 seconds and you hear a little zzz, like a little humming sound. You gotta listen carefully. But if you're familiar with that noise and you're in your vehicle and you do that and you realize, hey, it's not humming, that's probably a good indication the fuel pump's not working. Now, if your fuel pump's humming and it's not starting, it could be that you're low on gas too. So it's worth checking that out. I mean, people assume, we usually assume that when someone calls us that they're not out of gas, but we have had people come in, tow their vehicle in, and assume they have gas in the vehicle, and we do our range of diagnostic tests only to find that they don't have any gas in the vehicle. It takes time to actually test through these things, and there's no gas. So a dead fuel pump and no gas can sometimes seem like the same thing. It just takes a bit of testing. So if you're on the roadside and you think you might be low on gas, it probably wouldn't hurt to actually just get a jerry can and put it in put a gallon of gas in the vehicle and see if that actually makes a difference. If you know you've got lots of gas, well, then it's not worth it.
So do you have any tips on how to prolong the life of my fuel pump? I'd like
I've got an interesting
avoid this.
Share another photo here. Just give me a second here. Look at the photo here. See the fuel gauge?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is how the Range Rover was after we put the fuel pump in and started the vehicle up. This is how the fuel gauge was reading. There was very little fuel in the tank. This vehicle wasn't here because it was out of gas. It was, but this is not a scenario you want to have to do very often on your vehicle. There's once your fuel gets down to say between half and quarter, usually the low fuel warning light comes on. This is the ideal time. Fill the tank up at this point. Don't let it run. Don't let it get low. I mean, unless it's an emergency, because fuel pumps do need to be bathed in gasoline to keep cool. That's part of the design of them. They made them a little smaller and more compact. There is pieces inside the fuel assembly that actually keeps the fuel coated in fuel, but the lower the fuel level, the harder it is on the pump. And this used to be really true back about 20 years ago. There are a lot of vehicles, if you ran it low on fuel a lot, you'd burn your pump out. But don't let this happen. Don't let the fuel get low like this, because that will definitely shorten the life of your fuel pump.
So basically, don't try and set records with how many kilometers you're getting out of your tank of gas.
Exactly. It's better to let it get a little low and fill it up, and that'll prolong the life of your fuel pump. I mean, most cars, a cheap fuel pump job nowadays is probably $700, and a lot of vehicles it can be $1,200, $1,500. Even American vehicles, where you tend to think, oh, these are cheaper to fix. A lot of fuel pump jobs, and those can be $1,000 to $1,200. So yeah, take care of your fuel pump. Make sure it lasts a long time, and that's it.
Right, so we've been talking with Mr. Bernie Pawlik at Pawlik Automotive in Vancouver. They're 14-time voted by their customers as the best auto repair in Vancouver. You can reach them at 604-327-7112. They're just launching their new, opening another 3 bays here in the next short period of time. So there'll be even more excellence to serve you even better. You can also check out their award-winning website at pawlikautomotive.com. Thanks, Bernie.
Thanks, Mark. We'll talk to you again soon.